Chapter 1. Quiet as poison. Rain sicked the alley like glass, pooling in uneven patches along cracked concrete. Neon signs flickered green and pale white above, the glow bouncing off puddles in distorted patterns. Trash bags bulged against chain-link fences, some torn and spilling with cardboard and rotting food. Every footstep squelched as her boots pressed into the thin layer of grime coating the ground. The city had changed. A week ago, portals had torn open across the world, rips in reality that spilled creatures into streets that weren't meant to hold them. She'd been 3 blocks away when the first one opened. I felt the air pressure change, the way reality seemed to hiccup and stutter. The sound was what stayed with her, not an explosion or a roar, a whisper that made her teeth ache and her vision blur. Like the universe itself was tearing. The news called them mare beasts, but that sanitized term didn't capture the rawness of them, the way they moved through spaces that rejected their existence. She'd seen a dog-sized rat made of what looked like living crystal tear through a parked car like tissue paper. Had watched from a rooftop as something with too many legs and eyes that blurred like molten copper stalked through an intersection, leaving footprints that smoked and bubbled on the asphalt. Most people had fled to the shelters, massive concrete bunkers the government had thrown up in a panic, packing thousands into spaces meant for hundreds, where they'd barricaded themselves indoors, boarding up windows and praying that the walls would hold. She tried that for 2 days, holed up in her studio apartment with a baseball bat and a growing certainty that hiding would only delay the inevitable. The ones who remained on the streets were either desperate, stupid, or hunting. She was hunting, not for sport, not for glory. The creature she tracked here, the snake with its poisoned and armored scales, had killed her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who lived 3 doors down and always had a kind word even when the world was normal. They'd found her in an alley 2 blocks from her apartment, skin bubbled and blistered, eyes wide with whatever final horror she'd seen. The police, what was left of them, had taken photos and filed a report that would never be followed up on. Too many bodies, not enough time, so she'd taken matters into her own hands. Her black hoodie clung to her back, pull-string backpack pressed tight against her spine. Inside protein bars, a half-empty water bottle, a first aid kit she'd lifted from a looted pharmacy 3 days ago. The 6-inch fixed blade at her hip felt heavy in her hand now, its edge catching the neon's sickly reflection. She moved carefully, every step measured, weight distributed on the balls of her feet. She trained in gyms with peeling paint and cold wooden floors, Krav Maga drills, hammered into muscle memory until her body moved before her mind could catch up. But this wasn't a dojo, this was the city, and tonight, it was hungry. Her breath formed small clouds in the cold air. The temperature had dropped since the portals opened, another rawness, like reality itself was rejecting what had been forced into it. She could hear sirens in the distance, constant now, an ambient soundtrack to the new world. Somewhere a few blocks over, gunfire crackled short, controlled bursts. He awakened, clearing out another nest. Probably, the ones with powers didn't need to be this careful, didn't need to slip through alleys with nothing but a knife and training. She had endurance, training, and instinct. No mana flowing through her veins, no supernatural strength or speed, just muscle and will. That had to be enough. The alley stretched before her, narrow and where 2 brick buildings leaned toward each other like conspirators. Water dripped from fire escapes overhead, each drop echoing in the enclosed space. She tracked the thing here, following the trail of dead rats and a strange, acrid smell that reminded her of copper pennies left too long in the sun. Whatever it was, it had made this alley its hunting ground. A hiss split the damp air low, deliberate. Not wind, not a rat. The sound crawled up her spine and made the base of her skull prickle with ancient, primal warning. Her eyes narrowed as something moved where the alley narrowed, a ripple disturbing the green-streaked puddles. The neon light caught it run like the shape refused to be properly illuminated. From the shadows that emerged, black scales glistened with rain, each one thick as a thumbnail and layered like armor plates. The creature was massive, easily 12 feet long, its body as thick around as her thigh at its widest point, tapering to a tail that looked like it could snap bones with a casual flick. The viscous, greenish liquid trailed its body, not dripping but flowing with purpose, as if the poison itself was alive and aware. It pulled in dips of the pavement and clung to bricks like syrup, defying gravity in subtle ways that made her stomach turn. It wasn't mist or gas, it was tangible, deliberate, alive in a way that violated every natural law she understood. The scent hit her next, the sharp copper mixed with decay, so strong it made her eyes water and her sinuses burn. Beneath that, something else, sulfur maybe, or burning plastic, was something her brain simply didn't have a reference for. She watched the poison flow and stretch with the snake's movement, seeking purchase on every surface it touched, leaving trails that glow faintly in the darkness like luminescent paint. The snake moved with a fluid grace that belied its size, each ripple of muscle visible beneath those armored scales. It wasn't slithering so much as flowing, like water given form and intent. Its head was broader than she'd expected, almost triangular, with a jaw that looked capable of unhinging to swallow prey far larger than it should accommodate, and those eyes two burning points of amber that seemed to catch and reflect the neon light in ways that hurt to look at directly. Her pulse spiked, muscles tensed, blood rushed in her ears, drowning out the rain for a moment. She'd seen the videos online, the shaky footage of these things tearing through crowds, watched them replay on her phone screen in the safety of her apartment. This was different. This was personal. The snake's eyes, those burning ember points, fixed on her with an intelligence that made her skin crawl, and her flight instinct scream at her to run. It knew what she was. Prey, not just food, but something weaker, something that could be hunted and killed and consumed. There was no malice in that gaze, which somehow made it worse. Just cold assessment. Predator to prey, the way a cat might watch a mouse. The knife felt suddenly inadequate in her hand, 6 inches of steel against that armored body. But she'd come too far to back down now. 3 days of tracking, 2 near misses with other beasts, 1 night sleeping in a gutted storefront with her knife in hand and her back to a corner. This thing had killed at least 4 people that she knew of, bodies found in alleys, their skin bubbling with chemical burns, eyes wide and glassy with whatever poison this thing carried. No powers, just her. The snake coiled, the thick green liquid following every curve of its body like a living extension of itself. Its head rose, swaying slightly, tongue flicking out to taste the air. The poison pooled beneath it, spreading across the concrete in a slow tie. Before she could second guess, she lunged. Its head whipped sideways with impossible speed. Poison slammed against the wall where she'd been standing a heartbeat before. Sizzling against the brick, she pivoted on slick pavement, knife swinging in a practiced arc downward strike. Used the body's momentum, but her boots skidded on the wet surface. She recovered, planting her back foot and driving forward with her shoulder. Her elbow cracked against its flank, but the creature twisted away with fluid grace, and the sticky substance splattered across brick, pooling below in emerald puddles that seemed to pulse with their own sickly light. The fight had begun. She circled left, keeping her weight centered, knife held in a reverse grip. The snake's eyes tracked her, unblinking. It feinted right. She didn't take the bait, stayed planted, then struck left. She dropped into a crouch, the creature's body whistling over her head close enough that she felt the displaced air, rolled forward, came up inside its guard, drove the knife toward where she thought its spine might be. Metal scraped against scale, with a sound like nails on a chalkboard, barely a scratch. The scales were harder than she anticipated, layered and overlapping like natural chainmail. The snake twisted, its tail whipping around. She threw herself backward, but not fast enough. The tail caught her hip, sent her spinning into a chain-link fence. The metal rattled, biting into her back through the hoodie. Painfully hot and immediate, she pushed off the fence, using the momentum to dodge the next strike. Every move became calculation. She had to account for weight, leverage, traction. The puddles clung to her boots, each step requiring extra effort. Walls ran slick with the snake's venom, eliminating routes of escape. She twisted, pivoted, rolled across wet concrete, launching herself at angles it couldn't predict. Her training took her straight to accessory position. Never stay still, never let it pin you. The snake struck again, faster this time. She rolled under the attack, barely avoiding a strike that would have sent her sprawling into a heap of trash. Poison sprayed in an arc, some of it catching her leg. It clung to her leggings and gloves, heavy and dragging, forcing her muscles to fight against the sticky weight with every movement. The skin burned where it touched, even through the fabric, not the clean pain of a cut or bruise, but something deeper, something that felt like it was trying to burrow into her flesh. Focus. She couldn't afford to think about the pain, couldn't afford to wonder if the poison was already working its way into her bloodstream. She countered with a knee to its body, felt the impact jar up through her leg, felt the solid mass of muscle beneath those scales, and then elbowed to the base of its skull. The creature hissed, a sound like steam escaping under pressure, recoiling, but the liquid followed like it had its own will, oozing across bricks and seeking tendrils that tried to corner her, cut off her escape routes. This was like the training. In the dojo there were rules, mats to cushion falls, partners who pulled their strikes at the last second. Here every mistake was potentially fatal. The ground was slick and uneven, visibility poor, The enemy unpredictable. Her instructors had drilled it into her: be adaptable, be aware, be alive. She cycled through the mental checklist without thinking: exit routes, weapons of opportunity, environmental hazards. The trash cans could be cover or projectiles. The chain link fence behind her was both obstacle and weapon, if she could use it right. The puddles marked where the poison had pooled, areas to avoid. She lunged again, this time going low, aiming for the softer scales near its underbelly where the armor plates didn't overlap as thoroughly. The snake twisted in a flash. It was learning her patterns, she realized, adapting to her strategy, lashing toward a rusty trash can and sending it toppling. Metal crashed against concrete, the sound echoing off brick walls. She barely dodged, using the fallen trash can as cover before pivoting off the wall, feet planted, push off, redirect momentum to strike again. A knife found the bat. Between scales grew a thin line of black blood that steamed in the cold air. The blood was run too, she noticed distantly, too dark, too thick, and it smoked like acid. The creature hissed, and a tendril of poison whipped toward her like a living thing, like it had eyes and intent. She rolled through it, felt it coat her sleeves, the weight of it, like wet cement, scraped off what she could against the rough brick, feeling the fabric tear, throwing herself into another strike. Her instructor's voice echoed in her head. Pain is information. Use it. She catalogued her injuries without dwelling on them: bruised ribs from a fence, burned skin on her leg and arms where the poison had touched, pulled muscle in her shoulder from that last pivot. Nothing critical yet, nothing that would stop her. She could work through pain, had done it before in tournaments, in sparring sessions that went too hard in the months after Liana left, when she'd pushed herself until her body screamed for rest just so she could sleep without dreaming. Her knife found the gap between scales, drew a thin line of black blood that steamed in the cold air. The creature hissed, and a tendril of poison whipped toward her like a living thing. She rolled through it, felt it coat her sleeves, the weight of it like wet cement, scraped off what she could against the rough brick, throwing herself into another strike. Her lungs burned. Every breath came with effort now, the cold air and exertion combining to make her chest ache. Sweat ran down her face, mixing with rain. Her arms trembled from the constant tension. The endless cycle of strike and dodge and strike again. The snake was tiring too. She could see in the way its movements had lost some of their fluid grace. It was starting to favor its right side where she'd landed several solid hits, but she was slowing faster. Pain and adrenaline blurred together. Her breaths came ragged, each one burning her throat. Every strike, dodge and pivot pushed her to the edge of her endurance. She could feel the poison weighing her down, crawling into her senses, making her movements sluggish. Her vision swam at the edges, whether from exhaustion or the fumes she didn't know, but she forced herself to focus. Survival demanded it. Nothing else mattered, not the call, not the pain, not the growing certainty that she might not walk away from this. A trash bin toppled under another strike, sending bottles rolling. She kicked one toward the snake, creating a momentary distraction. The creature's head tracked the movement instinct, and she used the half-second opening to duck low and sweep her leg under its body. The move was sloppy desperation more than technique, but it worked. The snake's body lifted slightly, off balance. It hissed, twisting violently, spraying another thick arc of venom toward her. She threw herself flat, felt the poison pass over her, splattering against the wall behind with a wet slap. She swung the knife again as she rose, putting everything behind it. The blade found the same wound she'd opened before, drove deeper. The snake threshed. She held on, drove her elbow into its flank, felt something crack, and then she saw it, beneath the scales, visible through the wound she'd carved a crystal, whole, unbroken, pulsating with a dull green light as if it had its own heartbeat. It was embedded in the creature's chest, nestled between organs that pulsed and shifted with each labored breath. The light called to her, bypassing thought and speaking directly to something deeper, some ancient part of her hindbrain that recognized power when it saw it. She'd heard about these beast crystals. The rumors online said they were worth a fortune, that the awakened people with powers could use them somehow, that governments and corporations were paying ridiculous sums for even the smallest fragments. She dismissed it as fantasy, urban legend, the kind of nonsense that flourished in chaos. But here it was, real and solid and glowing in the creature's chest. It could change everything, buy her way into one of the secure zones. It real food instead of looted canned goods. Maybe even did her out of the city entirely to somewhere the portals hadn't reached. If such a place existed, the thought lasted half a second before instinct took over. The snake lunged, Sensing weakness or making a last desperate attempt, poison slapped against walls and pooled across the ground in heavy sheets, the air thick with its acrid stench. But she was inside its rhythm now, could predict the movement before it happened. She anticipated, pivoted inside its guard, and drove her knee into its chest with all the force she had left. Felt something give, thrust the blade between scales, found the gap she needed and twisted. The creature convulsed, once, twice. Its body went rigid, ember eyes dimming. Then it collapsed, the massive weight of it hitting the ground with a wet thud that sent ripples through the puddles. Green sludge oozed slowly from between its scales, mixing with the rain. The crystal remained whole, nestled beneath its body like some sinister prize waiting to be claimed. The green light pulsed steady, hypnotic, calling. She staggered forward, chest heaving, muscles trembling. Rain ran down her face and hoodie, mixing with sweat and the sticky residue coating her skin. Every movement felt like wading through wet concrete. Her hand shook as she reached for the crystal, fingers slipping on the wet scales. She had to use the knife to leave the one massive scale aside, exposing the creature's chest cavity. The crystal sat there, partially embedded in flesh that was already growing cool. Without thinking, without letting herself think, she reached in and gripped the crystal in both gloved hands. Pulled, it came free with a wet sound that made her stomach turn, trailing strands of tissue that snapped like overcooked noodles. Cold weight pressed against her palms. The green light pulsed once, twice echoing her own ragged heartbeat. The crystal was warm despite the rain, and smooth, and run in a way she couldn't articulate. It thrummed with energy that made her teeth ache. She should drop it, should run, should. Her knees gave way. She collapsed into the puddle, the sticky venom clinging to her close-bootsed skin. The crystal pressed against her chest, held there by hands that refused to open. She tried to draw a deep breath, but her lungs wouldn't fill, like something was wrapped around her ribs, squeezing tighter with each attempt. The tightness spread through her chest, cold and creeping, fingers of ice reaching toward her heart. Not painful exactly, worse than painful, numbing, like parts of her were simply ceasing to exist. Neon reflected off puddles and warped, broken patterns, the green and white light fragmenting into impossible geometries. The alley reeked of rain, rot, and the heavy poison soaking into her paws. She could taste it now, bitter and metallic on her tongue, coating her teeth, seeping into the soft tissues of her mouth and throat. Her body tried to reject it, throat convulsing, muscle spasming, but there was nothing in her stomach to bring up. Just dry heaves that made her ribs scream and her vision blur further. This is shock, some distant, clinical part of her mind observed. The body's response to trauma, decreased blood flow, oxygen deprivation, systemic shutdown. She'd learned about it in her first aid course years ago, back when the world made sense and the biggest threat was a training injury. That knowledge felt useless now, academic trivia in the face of actual dying. Her vision blurred at the edges, dark spots crawling inward like living things, not just darkness, shapes in the darkness, writhing and coiling. The crystal pulsed in her hands, green light throbbing in rhythm with a stuttering heartbeat. Or was her heart slowing to match it? The synchronization felt wrong, invasive, like the crystal was reaching into her chest and adjusting the rhythm of her heart to suit its own alien cadence. The boundary between her and the crystal seemed to be dissolving, the cold spreading from her palms up her arms, into her chest, wrapping around her heart, like frozen fingers. She tried to focus on something, anything, to anchor herself. The feel of wet concrete beneath her cheek, the sound of rain hitting metal, the sharp edge of a bottle cap pressing into her ribs. Small physical things, real things, but they were fading, becoming distant and unimportant compared to the cold spreading through her. Breath came shallow, then shallower. Her head lolled forward, silk hair plastered to her hoodie, rainwater running into her eyes. Fingers locked around the crystal she couldn't let go even if she wanted to, tendons rigid with cold, joints locked. The world narrowed to that pulsing green glow, the hiss of rain in puddles, and a distant sound she couldn't quite place. Sirens, voices, footsteps splashing through water, growing closer. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the cold spreading through her, the poison working its way deeper with each failing heartbeat. Her nervous system was shutting down in stages, first the extremities, fingers and toes going numb and distant, then her limbs, heavy and useless. Soon it would reach her core, her vital organs, and that would be the end of it. Every muscle went slack, her thoughts moved like syrup, thick and slow, each one taking forever to form before dissolving into nothing. Cold seeped through her clothes, through her skin, down into her bones. The poison inside her now, she could feel it crawl through her veins like ice water, mapping her circulatory system in burning cold. She could trace its path up her arms, across her shoulders, down into her chest where it coiled around her heart and squeezed. This is it, she thought distantly. I won, but I'm still dying. The irony would have been funny if she had the breath to laugh. She'd survived the fight, killed the creature, and the cries for her victory was death in a dirty alley, clutching a glowing rock while the rain washed her blood into the gutter. Somewhere, a car horn blared. Somewhere else, footsteps splashed through puddles, running, shouting something she couldn't make out. The city moved on, indifferent to the small, broken figure crumpled in the alley, clutching a glowing crystal like it could save her, like it wasn't the thing killing her. The rain fell harder. Her chest barely rose. The green light pulsed once more faint, flickering, and her eyes slipped closed. Darkness rushed in, welcomed like an old friend. The pain was distant now, happening to someone else, someone far away. The taste of poison flooded her mouth. Copper, rot, something else bitter and ancient and wrong, something that tasted like stone and time and things that should have stayed buried. The world went dark, and in that darkness something shifted. The crystal against her chest burned suddenly hot, then cold, then hot again, cycling through temperatures that should have seared her skin or frozen it solid, but somehow did neither. Her body arched involuntarily, back bowing off the wet concrete, limbs rigid, but she couldn't feel it anymore, couldn't feel anything except the sensation of falling into green light, into coiled darkness, into something vast and patient and waiting. It felt like sinking into deep water, that moment of transition where you can't tell which way is up, where pressure builds in your ears and your lungs scream for air you can't reach. But instead of water, it was energy raw, primal, ancient. It poured into her through the crystal, through her palms, through every pore of her skin, not gentle, not kind, invasive and absolute, rewriting something fundamental in her cellular structure. She could feel the change in her, though she had no words for what was happening. It was like her DNA was being read, assessed, judged, and found suitable. The poison that had been killing her met the crystal's energy, and something impossible occurred. They merged, fused, became something new. The toxin that should have dissolved her organs instead became fuel, raw material for transformation. Her nerves lit up with sensation that transcended pain or pleasure, just pure information flooding her system faster than her brain could process. She could feel the concrete beneath her, every groove and pebble, the rain on her skin, each drop a tiny impact with its own velocity and temperature. The air moving through the alley, currents and eddies invisible to the eye, were present to some new sense she couldn't name. And beneath it all, deeper than thought, older than language, a hiss, not the snake's dying breath, something else, something inside her, coiling and patient, watching through her eyes, tasting the air with her tongue, feeling the world through senses that hadn't existed moments before. Somewhere in a part of herself she didn't know existed, something ancient opened one eye and smiled. The last thing she registered before consciousness fled entirely was a thought that wasn't quite hers, spoken in a voice that echoed from somewhere deep and primordial. The prey has teeth.